The fabric tore with a sound that echoed through the kitchen. Simone's nails dug into Imani's shoulders, ripping her shirt straight down the front. Buttons scattered across the marble floor like fallen teeth. "Travis!" Imani screamed, 6 months pregnant, trying to shield her belly. "Make her stop." Her husband stood 3 feet away, arms crossed, watching. Simone grabbed her cardigan next, yanking so hard the seam split. Then her hands went for Imani's hair, the braids she'd just gotten done last week, and pulled. Hard enough to snap her head back. Hard enough to make tears spring to her eyes. "Please," Imani begged, her voice breaking. "I'm pregnant. My baby." "Should have thought about that before you disrespected me," Simone hissed, shoving her against the counter. Pain shot through Imani's spine. The baby kicked frantically inside her, sensing the danger. And still, Travis just stood there. The man she'd married. The father of her child. Doing absolutely nothing. When it was over, Imani's clothes hung in shreds. Her grandmother's necklace, the one she'd worn every day since Rose died, lay broken on the floor in pieces. "Get out," Travis said quietly. "Get your shit and get out of my house." She made one phone call from the porch where he'd thrown her. What happened next destroyed him completely. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever felt alone when you needed help most, you need to watch this story until the very end. What her brothers did made him regret everything he had done. But what Imani became, that will inspire you. Hey, my wonderful family. Welcome to Mr. William Chronicles, where we share stories about people who refuse to stay broken. Before we dive into Imani's journey, do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. You're about to witness something powerful, and I want you here for every second of it. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. This community is everything, and knowing you're out there makes these stories matter. Now let's get back to Imani. The morning it all fell apart started like every other morning. Imani woke up at 6. Travis's side of the bed was already cold. He'd been leaving earlier and earlier for work. She should have known then. But when you trust someone completely, you explain away the red flags. You make excuses for them. She made her way to the bathroom, her belly heavy and round at 20 weeks. Their daughter was active this morning, doing somersaults that made her smile despite the loneliness creeping in around the edges of her marriage. The house was silent. Too silent. Travis and Imani had bought this place in Riverside 3 years ago, right after she'd gotten her inheritance from Grandma Rose. $300,000. Rose had worked her whole life cleaning houses in wealthy neighborhoods, saved every penny, invested carefully. When she died, she left it all to Imani, her only granddaughter. "Use it wisely, baby girl," she'd whispered in the hospital, her hand papery and thin in Imani's. "Build something that lasts." So Imani did. She put down $150,000 on this house, renovated the kitchen, created a home, gave Travis seed money when he said he wanted to start his consulting business, trusted him when he said he'd pay me back. She should have asked more questions. Imani showered, dressed in one of the few outfits that still fit her changing body, and went downstairs. Travis was already gone. No note, no text, nothing. The coffee maker sat cold and empty. He hadn't made any for her like he used to in the early days, back when he'd wake her up with kisses on her shoulder and whisper sweet things about their future. She made her own coffee, decaf, for the baby, and sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone. A text from her brother Quincy popped up. "Quincy, you good, sis? Haven't heard from you in a minute." Imani hesitated, her thumbs hovering over the keyboard. What would she even say? That her husband barely looked at her anymore? That he flinched when she tried to touch him? That she was 6 months pregnant and felt more alone than she'd ever been? "Imani, I'm fine. Just tired. Pregnancy, brain, LOL. Quincy, don't bullshit me, Imani. Donovan and I are coming by this weekend. Imani, really, I'm okay. Love you." She set the phone down and pressed her palm against her belly. The baby kicked in response. "It's just us right now, baby girl," she whispered. "But we're gonna be fine." She had no idea how wrong she was. The day passed in a blur of emails and client calls, Imani ran a small graphic design business from home, which gave her the flexibility she'd need once the baby came. Travis had seemed supportive of it at first. Now he barely asked about her work. Around 3 in the afternoon, she needed to stretch her legs. The baby was sitting heavy on her bladder, and her back ached from sitting too long. She decided to walk to the corner store for some ginger ale. Pregnancy cravings were real. The November air was crisp, almost cold. She wrapped her cardigan tighter and made her way down their tree-lined street. Their neighborhood was the kind of place where people knew each other, where kids rode bikes and neighbors waved from porches. Mrs. Patterson was outside watering her roses. "Imani," she called out, her face lighting up. "Look at you, sweetheart. You're glowing." Imani forced a smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. When are you due?" "March. We're having a girl." "Oh, how wonderful." She set down her watering can and walked closer, her expression softening. "How's Travis doing? I haven't seen him around much lately." There it was, that knot in Imani's stomach that appeared every time someone mentioned her husband. "He's been busy with work," she said, the lie tasting bitter on her tongue. Mrs. Patterson studied her for a long moment, and Imani saw something flicker in the older woman's eyes. Pity, maybe, or recognition, like she'd seen this story before and knew how it ended. "You take care of yourself, honey," Mrs. Patterson said quietly. "And that baby." Imani nodded and kept walking, blinking back tears she refused to shed on a public street. When she got back home 20 minutes later, Travis's car was in the driveway. He was home early. That almost never happened anymore. She walked inside and found him in the kitchen, his laptop open on the counter, phone pressed to his ear. He was laughing, actually laughing, at something the person on the other end said. "Yeah, tomorrow works," he said, his voice warm in a way it hadn't been with Imani in months. "I'll pick you up at 8. He saw her then. The laughter died. "I gotta go," he said into the phone, his tone shifting to business professional. "We'll finalize everything tomorrow." He ended the call. "Who was that?" Imani asked, setting her ginger ale on the counter. "Client." He didn't look at her when he said it. "You never schedule meetings for 8 p.m. It's a dinner meeting, Imani. Networking. You wouldn't understand." The dismissiveness in his voice hit her like a slap. "Try me," she said, her voice sharper than intended. "I run my own business too, remember? Your little design thing isn't the same as what I do," he said, closing his laptop. "I'm building something real." Her breath caught. "My little design thing paid for half this house, Travis." He finally looked at her then, and the coldness in his eyes made her blood run cold. "Actually, your grandmother's money paid for this house," he said. "Let's not pretend you earned it." The baby kicked hard, like she felt her mother's rage and heartbreak colliding inside her. "What is wrong with you?" Imani whispered. He grabbed his laptop and walked past her without answering. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, then the sound of their bedroom door closing. Imani stood there in the kitchen, her hand on her belly, tears finally spilling over. Something was very, very wrong, and deep down, she already knew what it was. That night, Imani couldn't sleep. Travis had stayed in the bedroom, their bedroom, though it didn't feel like theirs anymore, with the door locked. She tried the handle once, softly, and gotten silence in response. So she made up the couch in the living room with blankets and pillows, trying to get comfortable despite her growing belly. The baby was restless too, moving and shifting like she sensed her mother's anxiety. Around midnight, she heard Travis's door open, footsteps in the hallway, then the front door closing quietly. Imani sat up and looked out the window just in time to see his car pull out of the driveway. At midnight, on a Tuesday. She grabbed her phone and opened the tracking app they'd set up 2 years ago. It was supposed to be for safety, so they'd always know where the other one was. Travis had insisted on it after she'd gotten a flat tire on the highway one night. Now she watched the little that represented her husband drive across town. It stopped at an address she didn't recognize. An apartment complex in the nicer part of downtown. Imani's heart hammered in her chest. She knew what this was. She'd known for weeks, maybe months, but hadn't wanted to face it. Her husband was cheating on her, while she was 6 months pregnant with his daughter. The tears came then, hot and angry and devastating. She cried into her pillow, trying to muffle the sounds so the neighbors wouldn't hear. The baby kicked and rolled, and Imani placed both hands on her belly, trying to soothe her daughter even as her own world crumbled. "I'm so sorry, baby girl," she whispered through her tears. "I'm so sorry you're going to grow up with this as your beginning." She cried until there were no tears left, until exhaustion finally pulled her under. When she woke up at dawn, Travis still wasn't home. The next 2 weeks were a special kind of hell. Travis came and went like a ghost. Some nights he slept in their bed, turned away from her, his body rigid and distant. Other nights he didn't come home at all, and Imani would track his phone to that same apartment downtown. She didn't confront him. Not yet. Because confronting him meant facing the truth, and facing the truth meant deciding what to do about it. And Imani wasn't ready for that. Not while she was pregnant and vulnerable and terrified of being alone. So she pretended. She went through the motions. She smiled at her design clients during video calls. She texted her brothers back with reassurances that everything was fine. She folded tiny onesies and organized the nursery and tried to convince herself that maybe this was just a phase, that Travis would snap out of it once the baby came. But deep down, she knew better. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon. Imani had a doctor's appointment, the 20-week anatomy scan. The big one where they'd check the baby's development, measure everything, make sure their daughter was healthy. Travis had promised to be there. Promised 3 weeks ago when they'd scheduled it. Imani sat in the waiting room at 2:45 p.m., 15 minutes before her appointment, her phone in her hand. No text from Travis. No call. She texted him. "Imani, hey, appointment is at 3. Are you on your way?" The message showed as delivered. Then read. No response. Imani waited. Watched the clock. 2:50, 2:55. At 2:58, her phone buzzed. "Travis, can't make it. Something came up at work. Get pictures." Something came up at work. Her hands shook as she typed back. "Imani, this is our daughter, Travis. You promised." "Travis, I said I can't make it. Stop being dramatic." The nurse called her name before she could respond. Imani stood up, her vision blurring with unshed tears, and followed the nurse back to the exam room. She changed into the gown, climbed onto the table, and let the technician squeeze cold gel onto her exposed belly. And she watched the screen alone as her daughter moved and stretched and lived inside her. Watched the technician measure her tiny femur and count her fingers and check her heart chambers. "Everything looks perfect," the technician said with a warm smile. "She's a healthy baby girl. You want to know if she's head down yet?" Imani nodded, not trusting her voice. "Not yet, but don't worry. Plenty of time for her to flip. Most babies don't settle into position until around 30 weeks. The technician printed out several ultrasound photos and handed them to Imani. "Your husband must be so excited." Imani looked down at the images of her daughter, her perfect, innocent daughter who deserved so much better than this. "Yeah," she whispered. "He is." She drove home in silence, the ultrasound photos on the passenger seat. When she got back to the house, Travis's car wasn't there. Imani walked inside, set her purse down, and stared at those photos. That's when something inside her shifted. She was done waiting, done pretending, done making excuses for a man who couldn't even show up for his own child. She picked up her phone and called Quincy. He answered on the second ring. "Hey sis, I need you and Donovan to come over this weekend," Imani said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "I need to talk to you both about something." There was a pause. Then Quincy's voice, serious and alert. "What's going on, Imani?" "Just come," she said. "Please." "We'll be there Saturday morning," he promised. "Whatever it is, we got you." Imani hung up and placed her hand on her belly. "Your uncles are coming, baby girl," she whispered. "And everything's about to change." She had no idea how right she was. Saturday morning came with gray skies that matched Imani's mood. She'd barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Travis's face on that phone screen, cold, detached, like she was nothing. Like their daughter was nothing. Quincy and Donovan were supposed to arrive at 10. Imani had cleaned the house, made coffee, tried to prepare herself for the conversation she needed to have with her brothers. But how do you tell the two men who raised you that your marriage is falling apart? That the husband they'd warned you about from the beginning had turned into exactly what they'd feared? At 9:47 a.m., Travis came downstairs. Imani was in the kitchen, her hand resting on her belly as the baby did her morning acrobatics. She looked up when she heard his footsteps. He was dressed nice. Too nice for a Saturday. Cologne wafting off him like he was heading somewhere important. Going somewhere? Imani asked, keeping her voice neutral. Out, he said, not looking at her. He grabbed his keys from the counter. My brothers are coming over in a few minutes. That made him pause. He turned to face her, and something flickered across his features. Annoyance, maybe. Or fear. Why? Because I invited them, Imani said, her courage building. We need to talk, Travis. About us. About what's been happening. He laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was harsh and bitter. There's nothing to talk about, Imani. You missed our daughter's ultrasound, she said, her voice cracking despite her best efforts. You promised you'd be there, and you just... I had work. You had work at 3 in the afternoon? On a Thursday. Imani stood up, her hands trembling. I'm not stupid, Travis. I know something's going on. I know you've been. You know what? He cut her off, his voice rising. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of you questioning me, following me, checking up on me like I'm some kid. I'm your wife. You're a mistake. The words exploded out of him, sharp and vicious. You want the truth? Fine. Here it is. I never wanted this. I never wanted you. I damn sure never wanted that baby. The world tilted. Imani grabbed the counter to steady herself, her breath coming in short gasps. The baby kicked hard, like she felt her mother's distress. You don't mean that, Imani whispered. I mean every word. Travis stepped closer, his face twisted with contempt. You trapped me with that pregnancy. Probably planned it, didn't you? Thought a baby would lock me down. We were married, Travis. We talked about starting a family. Yeah. Well, I was lying. He pulled out his phone. You know what? I've had enough. I didn't want to do this now, but you're just getting under my skin. You want to see how much I don't care about you? Watch this. He dialed a number. Put the phone on speaker. It rang twice. Baby. A woman's voice. Young. Bright. Eager. Imani's stomach dropped. Come over, Travis said, his eyes locked on Imani's face. Right now. It's time you met my wife. Oh my God, really? The woman, this Simone, actually sounded excited. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He hung up. Imani couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Her vision blurred at the edges. Travis, please, she managed. Please don't do this. It's already done. He crossed his arms. Simone's been living in that apartment downtown for 3 months. The one I've been paying for. The one I go to every night to get away from you. Every word was a knife. I'm 6 months pregnant with your child, Imani said, tears streaming down her face now. That's your problem, not mine. A car door slammed outside. Footsteps on the walkway. The doorbell rang. Travis smiled, actually smiled, and went to answer it. Imani heard the door open. Heard a woman's voice, high and flirty. Where is she? Kitchen. Heels clicked on the hardwood floor. And then she was there. Simone was everything Imani wasn't. Tall, thin, dressed in designer clothes that probably cost more than Imani's monthly mortgage payment. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. She looked at Imani, pregnant, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt, tears on her face, and smiled. Finally, Simone said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I get to meet the mistake he's been telling me about. The words hit like a physical blow. Excuse me. Imani's voice came out small, broken. Oh, honey. Simone walked closer, circling Imani like a predator. Did you really think he loved you? Look at you. You're nothing. You were just a placeholder until he found someone better. Get out of my house, Imani said, finding her voice. Your house. Simone laughed and looked at Travis. Baby, tell her. Travis leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold like it was entertainment. "Tell her what?" he said. "About our plans." "Simone's moving in tomorrow," Travis said casually. "So, yeah, Imani, you need to pack your stuff and go." The room spun. "You can't do this," Imani whispered. "This is my house. I paid for it with my inheritance." "Actually," Travis interrupted, "both our names are on the deed, which means it's half mine. And I'm choosing to live here with Simone. You're free to leave." "I'm pregnant." Imani's voice rose, desperate. "Where am I supposed to go?" "Call your brothers," Travis said with a shrug. "They've always treated you like you're made of glass anyway. I'm sure they'll take you in." Simone was still circling, and something in her eyes had turned cruel. "You know what I don't understand," she said, stepping closer to Imani. "How you let yourself go like this. I mean, I get that you're pregnant, but there's no excuse for looking this pathetic." "Don't talk to me," Imani said, backing away. But Simone kept coming. "He told me you were boring in bed," she continued, her voice poison. "Said you just laid there like a dead fish. No wonder he came looking for something better." "Stop it." Imani's back hit the counter. "And this baby?" Simone's hand shot out, touching Imani's belly. "He doesn't even want it. You're raising it alone, honey. Might as well get used to that now." "Don't touch me." Imani shoved her hand away. That's when Simone's expression changed. The fake sweetness vanished, replaced by pure hatred. "You just put your hands on me," she said slowly. "You touched me first." Simone's hand shot out and grabbed the front of Imani's shirt. The fabric was thin, worn from months of pregnancy, and it gave way immediately with a sharp ripping sound. The shirt tore down the front, exposing Imani's bra and her pregnant belly. Imani gasped, trying to cover herself. But Simone wasn't done. She grabbed at Imani's cardigan next, yanking it so hard the buttons popped off and scattered across the kitchen floor. Then her hands went to Imani's necklace, the delicate gold chain Grandma Rose had given her, and ripped it from her neck. "Stop!" Imani cried out, trying to protect herself and her belly at the same time. "Stop it!" But Simone was in a frenzy now, grabbing and tearing, her nails scratching Imani's arms and shoulders. "Travis!" Imani screamed, looking at her husband. "Make her stop." Travis just stood there, watching, doing nothing. Simone shoved her hard. Imani's back slammed against the counter, and pain shot through her spine. The baby kicked frantically, and terror flooded through Imani, not for herself, but for her daughter. "Please," Imani sobbed, her arms wrapped around her belly. "Please, I'm pregnant. My baby." "Should have thought about that before you disrespected me," Simone hissed. She grabbed Imani's hair and yanked her forward, then shoved her toward the living room. Imani stumbled, nearly falling, her torn clothes hanging off her body. "Travis, please." Imani begged one last time. Her husband looked at her with eyes so empty, they might as well have belonged to a stranger. "Get out," he said quietly. "What?" "You heard me." His voice was flat. "Dead. Get your shit and get out of my house." "Travis, I'm 6 months pregnant. Where am I supposed to?" "Not my problem." He pulled out his phone. "You've got 10 minutes before I call the cops and have you removed for assault. Simone witnessed you attack her." "I didn't. She attacked me." "That's not what we'll tell them," Simone said with a smile, examining her perfect nails. "And who do you think they'll believe? The hysterical pregnant woman or two calm, professional people?" Imani looked down at herself, her shirt torn open, her cardigan destroyed, scratch marks bleeding on her arms, her grandmother's broken necklace on the floor. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. But it was. "Fine," she whispered, her voice hollow. "I'll leave." She walked upstairs on shaking legs, her torn clothes barely covering her. In the bedroom, their bedroom, she grabbed a duffel bag and started throwing things inside. Clothes, toiletries, her laptop, the ultrasound photos from her appointment. Her hands moved automatically while her mind screamed. "This is real. This is happening. You're being thrown out while pregnant. Your husband just let another woman assault you." She came back downstairs carrying her bag, still in her torn clothes, because she couldn't bear to be in this house 1 second longer than necessary. Travis and Simone were on the couch. His arm was around her. They were laughing at something on her phone. They didn't even look up as Imani walked past them to the front door. She stepped outside into the cold November morning, the door slamming shut behind her. The lock clicked. Imani stood on the porch of the house she'd bought with her inheritance, wearing torn clothes, 6 months pregnant, with nowhere to go. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone and dialed Quincy. He answered immediately. "Sis, we're 5 minutes away." "He threw me out," Imani said, her voice breaking. "Travis threw me out. I need you. Please, I need you right now." "What?" "Imani, where are you?" "Outside the house." He, his mistress, she, the words wouldn't come. The sobs took over. "Don't move." Quincy's voice turned to steel. "We're almost there. Don't move, don't go anywhere. We're coming." 3 minutes later, a black truck screeched to a stop in front of the house. Quincy and Donovan jumped out, and the second Imani saw her brothers, she collapsed. They caught her before she hit the ground. "I got you, sis," Quincy said, holding her up while Donovan grabbed her bag. "We got you." Imani looked back at the house one last time. Through the window, she could see Travis and Simone, still on the couch, still laughing, like she'd never existed at all. "Let's go," Donovan said quietly. His jaw clenched so tight it looked ready to break. "Get her in the truck." They drove away from the house in silence, Imani sobbing in the back seat, her brother's fury radiating through the vehicle like heat. She had no idea that this was just the beginning, that Travis Porter had made the biggest mistake of his life, and that her brothers were about to make sure he paid for every single second of what he'd just done. The truck ride to Quincy's house was silent except for Imani's crying. She sat in the back seat, clutching what remained of her torn cardigan around her shoulders, trying to process what had just happened. Her body ached from where Simone had shoved her. Her belly felt tight, the baby moving restlessly inside like she knew something terrible had occurred. Donovan kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror. His hands gripping the steering wheel, so hard his knuckles had gone white. Quincy was on his phone in the passenger seat, his jaw working like he was chewing glass. "Yeah," he said into the phone, his voice deadly calm. "I need you to pull everything you can find on a Travis Porter. Lives in Riverside. Yeah, that's him. Everything. Bank records, business filings, property records, phone records if you can get them. I don't care what it costs." He hung up and turned to look at Imani. "Who was that?" she asked, her voice hoarse from crying. "Someone who's going to help us bury him," Quincy said simply. 20 minutes later, they pulled into Quincy's driveway. He lived in a nice neighborhood about 30 minutes from Riverside, a 3-bedroom house he bought 2 years ago when his contracting business really took off. Donovan parked and came around to help Imani out of the truck. She winced as she stood, her back still throbbing from hitting the counter. "You need a doctor," Donovan said, studying her face. "I need to lie down," Imani whispered. They got her inside and upstairs to the guest room. Quincy's girlfriend Maya was already there, her face tight with concern. "Oh, honey," Maya breathed when she saw Imani's torn clothes and scratched arms. "Come on, let's get you cleaned up." The brothers left them alone. Maya helped Imani out of her destroyed clothing and into a warm shower. The water stung the scratches on her arms and shoulders, but Imani barely felt it. She was numb. Afterward, Maya gave her soft pajamas and helped her into bed. "The baby?" Maya asked gently, her hand hovering near Imani's belly. "She's moving," Imani said, placing her palm where her daughter was kicking. "I think she's okay, but I should probably." "We're taking you to the emergency room," Maya said firmly, "just to make sure. But first, you need to tell the guys exactly what happened. All of it." An hour later, Imani sat on Quincy's couch, wrapped in a blanket, with her brothers on either side of her. Maya had made tea. Nobody was drinking it. "Start from the beginning," Quincy said quietly. "And don't leave anything out." So Imani told them everything. About Travis coming home later and later. About the phone calls and the laughter that disappeared when she walked into rooms. About tracking his location to that downtown apartment. About missing the ultrasound appointment. About this morning, Her voice broke when she got to the part about Simone tearing her clothes, but she pushed through it. Told them how Travis had just stood there, how he'd watched another woman assault his pregnant wife and done nothing, how he'd thrown her out like garbage. When she finished, the silence in the room was thick enough to choke on. Donovan spoke first, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. "I'm going to kill him." "Get in line," Quincy said, standing up. He started pacing, his hands flexing at his sides like he was imagining them around Travis's throat. "That piece of shit put his hands on our sister." "He didn't touch me," Imani said quietly. "Simone did." "He let it happen," Quincy shot back. "Same thing. And then he kicked you out while you're 6 months pregnant." He let out a harsh laugh. "Nah, that's not how this ends." "What are you going to do?" Imani asked, fear creeping into her voice. "Quincy, I don't want you getting in trouble because of—" "We're not touching him," Quincy said, holding up his hands. "Not physically. But Travis Porter is about to learn what happens when you mess with our family." He pulled out his phone and made another call. "Marcus?" "Yeah, it's Quincy. I need a favor. Remember that private investigator you used when your partner was cooking the books?" "Yeah. I need his number. Right now." By Monday morning, Quincy's contact had delivered. The private investigator, a quiet man named James who'd worked 20 years as a forensic accountant before going private, sat at Quincy's dining table with a laptop and 3 thick folders. Imani sat across from him, her brothers on either side of her like bodyguards. "Before I show you what I found," James said, looking at Imani with sympathy in his eyes, "I need to warn you. This is going to hurt." "Just tell me," Imani said, her hands wrapped around her belly protectively. James opened the first folder. "Travis Porter started his consulting business 3 years ago with a $100,000 investment from you, correct?" Imani nodded. "He said he needed it to get off the ground. Said he'd pay me back once the business was profitable." "The business never existed," James said flatly. The room went silent. "What?" Imani whispered. James turned his laptop around, showing her a screen full of records. "There's no LLC registration, no business license, no tax filings. The consulting business Travis claimed to run is completely fictional. But he goes to work," Imani said, her mind struggling to catch up. "Every day. He has meetings. He has a job," James interrupted, "at a marketing firm downtown. Makes about $70,000 a year. But there's no consulting business. Never was." Quincy leaned forward. "So where did the $100,000 go?" James opened the second folder. "Simone Davis, age 26. Works as a receptionist at the same marketing firm where Travis works. That's how they met." He laid out photos. Simone and Travis at restaurants, coming out of the downtown apartment together, at a jewelry store. "He's been spending your money on her," James said. "The apartment lease? Paid for with a cashier's check that came from an account in your name that Travis had access to. The car she drives? A BMW. Purchased 6 months ago. Down payment of $40,000 came from that same account." Imani felt sick. "There's more," James said quietly. "Your inheritance from your grandmother. $300,000. You put $150,000 down on the house, gave Travis $100,000 for his business, and kept $50,000 in a joint savings account for emergencies. Correct?" "Yes," Imani breathed. "That savings account is empty. Travis withdrew all $50,000 in increments over the last year. Put it into a personal account you don't have access to." The room tilted. "But that's not the worst part," James continued. He opened the third folder, and Imani saw documents with the mortgage company's letterhead. 3 months ago, Travis took out a home equity line of credit against your house. He borrowed $200,000 using the house as collateral. "He can't do that without my signature," Imani said, her voice shaking. James slid a document across the table. "This is your signature, or a very good forgery. Either way, the money's gone." Imani stared at the signature. It looked like hers, but she'd never seen this document before in her life. "Where did the money go?" Donovan asked, his voice dangerous. About $50,000 went to paying off Simone's student loans, James said. Another $75,000 went into a joint investment account in both their names. The rest is scattered across luxury purchases, watches, clothes, a vacation to Hawaii they took 2 months ago while you thought he was at a conference. Imani couldn't breathe. 2 months ago, Travis had told her he had a work conference in San Francisco. He'd been gone for 5 days. She'd been 4 months pregnant, dealing with morning sickness, working from home alone. He'd been in Hawaii with Simone, using her money. So let me make sure I understand this, Quincy said, his voice deadly quiet. He stole $300,000 from our sister, forged her signature to steal even more, spent it all on his mistress, and then kicked Imani out while she's pregnant. That about covers it, James said. Can we prove all this? Donovan asked. Every transaction is documented, James confirmed. Bank records, credit card statements, wire transfers. It's all here. And the signature forgery? I had a handwriting expert look at it. He's 90% certain it's fake. That's fraud. Quincy stood up and walked to the window, his shoulders rigid. This is enough to put him in prison, he said. Possibly, James agreed. Wire fraud, forgery, financial elder abuse, since the original inheritance came from a deceased relative. You're looking at serious federal charges if you want to pursue them. Imani sat there, staring at the folders spread across the table. $300,000. Her grandmother's entire life savings. The money Rose had worked herself to exhaustion for, cleaning houses until her hands bled, saving every penny so her granddaughter would have a better life. Gone. Spent on another woman, while Imani carried Travis's child. I want to see him, she said suddenly. Everyone looked at her. Imani, Quincy started. I need to look him in the face, she said, her voice stronger now. I need him to know that I know. That's not a good idea, Maya said gently. He's already shown he's willing to let you get hurt. I won't be alone, Imani said, looking at her brothers. Will I? Quincy and Donovan exchanged a look. No, Quincy said finally. You won't. They went to the house on Tuesday afternoon. Imani sat in the truck outside for a long moment, staring at the home she'd bought with her inheritance. The home Travis had stolen from her. You ready? Donovan asked from the driver's seat. Yeah, Imani said. I'm ready. They walked up to the front door together. Quincy rang the doorbell. Travis answered, and the surprise on his face when he saw Imani flanked by her brothers would have been funny under different circumstances. What do you want? He said, trying to sound tough but failing. We need to talk, Imani said calmly. About the $300,000 you stole from me. Travis's face went pale. I don't know what you're. The business that doesn't exist, Imani continued, stepping forward. The home equity loan you took out with my forged signature. The apartment you're paying for. Simone's car. Her student loans. The Hawaii trip. Should I keep going? Travis's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You have nothing, he finally managed. You can't prove. Quincy held up his phone, showing the screen. Bank records. Credit card statements. Witness statements from the mortgage company. A handwriting expert's report on the forgery. We have everything. Here's what's going to happen, Donovan said, his voice calm but terrifying. You're going to let Imani get her belongings from this house. Every single thing that belongs to her. And you're going to stand there quietly while she does it. This is my house too, Travis said, but his voice wavered. No, Imani said, finding strength she didn't know she had. This is my house. That I bought with my grandmother's money. That you stole. And you're going to give it back. Or what? Quincy smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Or we go to the police with everything we have. Wire fraud. Forgery. Financial abuse. You'll be arrested by the end of the week. And then we'll go after Simone as an accessory, since her name's on half these transactions. Travis's face went from pale to gray. You're bluffing. Try us, Donovan said. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Travis stepped aside. Get your stuff and get out, he muttered. Imani walked into her house for what she knew would be the last time. But this time, She walked in with her head high, because Travis Porter had no idea what was coming for him. And Imani was just getting started. The lawyer's office was on the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise. Imani sat in the waiting room, 7 months pregnant now, her belly round and heavy. Quincy sat on her left, Donovan on her right. They'd been her shadows for the past 3 weeks, refusing to let her face any of this alone. A woman in a sharp suit emerged from the inner office. "Mrs. Porter, I'm Patricia Chun. Come on back." They followed her into a corner office with windows overlooking the city. Patricia gestured for them to sit. "I've reviewed everything your investigators sent over," Patricia said, settling behind her desk. "And I have to say, this is one of the most clear-cut cases of financial fraud I've seen in years." "Can we win?" Imani asked. "Win?" Patricia smiled. "Mrs. Porter, we're not just going to win. We're going to destroy him." She opened a folder and pulled out documents. "Here's what we're filing. Civil suit for the full $300,000 he stole from your inheritance, plus the $200,000 from the fraudulent home equity loan, plus damages. We're also pursuing criminal charges, wire fraud, forgery, identity theft." "How long will this take?" Donovan asked. "Criminal case? Could take months to go to trial. But the civil suit moves faster, especially when the evidence is this solid." Patricia looked at Imani. "I need you to prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly. Travis will fight back. He'll lie. He'll try to paint you as the villain." "Let him try," Imani said quietly. Patricia studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Good. Because we're about to make his life a living hell." The lawsuit was filed on a Friday. By Monday, Travis had been served. Imani knew the exact moment he got the papers because her phone started blowing up. "Travis, you fucking bitch. Travis, you think you can sue me? I'll bury you. Travis, that baby probably isn't even mine. Travis, you're going to regret this." She showed the text to Patricia, who smiled like a shark. "Keep them coming," Patricia said. "Every threat, every insult. It all helps our case." But Travis wasn't done. 2 days later, Imani got a call from her biggest client, a tech startup she'd been doing design work for since they launched. "Imani, I'm so sorry," the founder said, sounding genuinely uncomfortable. "But we're going to have to terminate our contract." Imani's stomach dropped. "What? Why? Did I do something wrong?" "No, your work is great. It's just, someone contacted us. Said there were some questions about your professional conduct. Financial irregularities. We can't risk the association right now." Imani closed her eyes. "Was it a man named Travis Porter?" Silence. "Then, I can't confirm that. He's lying," Imani said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm actually suing him for fraud. Whatever he told you." "I'm sorry, Imani. The decision's already been made." She lost 2 more clients that week. Travis was trying to destroy her income, her reputation, everything she'd built. But he forgot one thing. She had brothers who'd been waiting their entire lives to protect her from exactly this kind of man. Quincy made the first move. Travis's fake consulting business had a website. Professional looking, full of testimonials and case studies. All completely fabricated. Quincy sent the website link to every business forum and review site he could find, along with proof that the business didn't exist. Within 48 hours, Travis's name was associated with fraud on the first page of Google results. Donovan went after Simone. He had a buddy who worked at the marketing firm where both Travis and Simone were employed. One anonymous tip to HR about their relationship, which violated company policy, and they were both called in for meetings. Simone was fired the next day for sleeping with a colleague and using company resources for personal business. Travis got a formal warning and was removed from his team lead position. But Imani's brothers weren't done. Not even close. The preliminary hearing for the criminal case was set for mid-December. Imani was 8 months pregnant by then, so big she could barely tie her shoes. But she insisted on being there. Patricia had warned her what to expect. "He's going to show up looking perfect," she said. "Expensive suit, expensive lawyer. He's going to try to convince the judge that you're a scorned wife making false accusations." But we have proof, Imani said. We do. And that's why we're going to win. The courtroom was small and cold. Imani sat behind the prosecutor's table, her brothers flanking her like sentries. Travis walked in 20 minutes late, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Imani's monthly mortgage payment. His lawyer was a slick-looking man in his 50s who carried a briefcase that screamed money. Simone was with him. She sat in the gallery behind Travis, wearing a tight dress and heels, her hand resting possessively on his shoulder before he sat down. When Travis finally turned and saw Imani, their eyes met. She saw the hatred there, the rage. Good, she thought. Feel it, because it's nothing compared to what's coming. The judge entered, and the hearing began. The prosecutor laid out the charges methodically. Wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, each one backed by documents that Patricia's investigator had uncovered. Travis's lawyer tried to argue that it was a marital dispute, not a criminal matter, that Imani had given Travis permission to access the accounts, that the signature on the home equity loan was legitimate. Then the prosecutor called their handwriting expert. The man was in his 70s, had testified in hundreds of cases, and his credentials took 5 minutes to read into the record. He explained in simple terms how Travis's forgery of Imani's signature had at least 15 points of deviation from her actual handwriting. In my professional opinion, he said, looking directly at the judge, this signature is a deliberate forgery, and not a particularly good one. Travis's face went red. His lawyer tried to discredit the expert, but it was useless. The evidence was overwhelming. Then came the bank records. Every transaction laid out in detail. The $100,000 for the fake business. The $50,000 drained from savings. The $200,000 from the fraudulent home equity loan. And where it all went. Simone's apartment. Her car. Her student loans. Luxury purchases. The Hawaii vacation. The prosecutor pulled up photos from that vacation. Travis and Simone on a beach, drinks in hand. Her in a bikini. Him with his arm around her waist. These photos were taken on September 15th, the prosecutor said. At the time, Mrs. Porter was 4 months pregnant with the defendant's child and believed her husband was at a work conference in San Francisco. The judge's expression hardened. Travis's lawyer was sweating now. Your Honor, my client maintains that his wife gave him permission. Then why did he forge her signature? The judge interrupted. Silence. Your Honor, the lawyer tried again. This is a marriage falling apart. Emotions are high. My client made some poor financial decisions, but that doesn't constitute. He stole $500,000 from his pregnant wife, the judge said flatly, using forged documents and fraudulent business claims. How is that not criminal? The lawyer had no answer. The judge looked at Travis. Mr. Porter, do you have anything to say for yourself? Travis stood up, and for a moment, Imani thought he might actually apologize. Might show some remorse. Instead, he pointed at Imani. She's lying, he said, his voice shaking with anger. About all of it. This is revenge because I left her for someone better. She's trying to ruin my life because she can't accept that I don't want her anymore. The courtroom went silent. Imani felt Quincy tense beside her, but she put her hand on his arm. Stayed calm. Patricia stood up. Your Honor, if I may, she said smoothly. We have Mr. Porter on record in text messages calling his unborn daughter, probably not even mine. We have him on record threatening Mrs. Porter. And we have testimony from a neighbor who witnessed him allowing another woman to physically assault Mrs. Porter while she was 6 months pregnant. She pulled out her phone and showed the text Travis had sent. Every vile word projected on the screen for the judge to see. Travis's face went pale. I recommend, the judge said slowly, that Mr. Porter's counsel advise him to stop talking before he makes this worse for himself. The lawyer grabbed Travis's arm and yanked him back into his seat. The judge reviewed the evidence for another 20 minutes, then looked up. Based on the preliminary evidence presented, I'm finding probable cause to proceed with criminal charges on all counts. Mr. Porter, you're looking at up to 15 years in federal prison if convicted. Trial date is set for February 10th. Bail is set at $200,000. Travis's lawyer shot to his feet. Your Honor, that's excessive. Your client stole $500,000 and has already shown a pattern of harassment toward the victim. The judge said, $200,000 is generous. Make sure he shows up for trial, counselor. Dismissed. The gavel came down. Imani sat there, her hand on her belly, and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Outside the courthouse, Simone was waiting by Travis's car. She saw Imani walking out with her brothers and her lawyer, and her face twisted with rage. This isn't over, she shouted across the parking lot. You think you've won? You haven't won anything. Patricia put a hand on Imani's shoulder. Keep walking. Don't engage. But Simone wasn't done. She ran across the parking lot in her heels, getting right in Imani's face. He's going to beat this, she hissed. And when he does, you're going to be sorry. You and that bastard baby. Quincy stepped between them, so fast Simone stumbled backward. Say one more word about my niece, he said quietly, and I promise you'll regret it. Are you threatening me? Simone shrieked. No, Donovan said, pulling out his phone. But we are recording you. Keep going. See what happens. Simone looked at the phone, then at Quincy's face, and whatever she saw there made her back down. She retreated to Travis's car, and they drove away, tires squealing. Imani watched them go, then looked at Patricia. What happens now? Now, Patricia smiled. Now we prepare for trial. And trust me, by the time we're done, Travis Porter is going to wish he'd never met you. If you're still watching and feeling that satisfaction right now, hit that like button, because Imani's just getting started. Show this story some love with a like, and comment I see you, Imani, if you're rooting for her to make him pay for everything he's done. Subscribe to Mr. William Chronicles if you're enjoying this story, so you don't miss what happens when Travis finally faces real justice. The trial began on February 10th, exactly as scheduled. Imani was 9 days past her due date. You should be in a hospital, not a courtroom, Maya said that morning, helping Imani into the only dress that still fit her massive belly. I need to be there, Imani said, wincing as the baby kicked her ribs. I need to see his face when they read the verdict. Patricia had tried to talk her out of it too, but Imani was done being the victim in her own story. She was going to watch Travis Porter go down, even if she had to waddle into that courtroom and sit on an exercise ball to do it. The courthouse was packed. Somehow, the case had gotten media attention. Pregnant woman defrauded by husband made for good headlines. Reporters lined the hallway, cameras flashing as Imani made her way inside with her brothers. Travis was already seated at the defense table with his lawyer. He looked thinner than Imani remembered, his suit hanging loose on his frame. Good. She hoped he hadn't slept in weeks. Simone sat in the gallery again, but this time she kept her eyes down. No smug smiles. No designer dress. Just a nervous woman realizing she might have backed the wrong horse. The jury filed in 7 women, 5 men. Patricia had been strategic during selection, making sure there were mothers on that jury. People who'd understand what it meant to steal from a pregnant woman. All rise, the bailiff called. Judge Morrison entered, the same judge from the preliminary hearing. She took her seat and looked out over the courtroom with sharp eyes. Let's begin, she said. The prosecution went first. Patricia stood and addressed the jury like she was telling them a story, which Imani supposed she was. 3 years ago, Patricia began, Imani Porter's grandmother died and left her $300,000. Rose Williams had worked her entire life for that money, cleaned houses until her hands bled, saved every penny. Why? So her granddaughter could have a better life. Patricia walked slowly in front of the jury box. Imani used that money wisely. She bought a house. She started a business. She built something stable and secure. Then she met Travis Porter. And within 3 years, every dollar her grandmother died to give her was gone. She turned and pointed at Travis. Stolen. By the man she married. The man she trusted. The father of her child. The jury's eyes followed her finger to Travis, who sat stone-faced. Patricia spent the next hour laying it all out. The fake business. The forged signature. The secret apartment. The other woman. Every transaction documented. Every lie exposed. Then she called her first witness. James, the private investigator, walked the jury through the paper trail. Bank statements projected on screens, numbers highlighted in red. Money flowing from Imani's accounts into Travis's pockets, then straight to Simone. This wasn't poor judgment, James said. This was systematic theft over 3 years. Planned, calculated, deliberate. Travis's lawyer tried to object, tried to claim it was speculation, but Judge Morrison shut him down. Next came the handwriting expert, repeating his analysis of the forged signature. Then the neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who testified about seeing Imani thrown out of her own house, clothes torn, while heavily pregnant. I heard shouting, Mrs. Patterson said, her voice shaking. I looked out my window and saw Imani on the porch, crying, her shirt ripped open. 6 months pregnant, and her own husband had locked her out. Several jurors looked at Travis with open disgust. Then Patricia called Imani to the stand. Imani walked to the witness stand slowly, one hand supporting her lower back, the other on her belly. The baby had been quiet all morning, but now she was awake and moving. Patricia approached gently. Mrs. Porter, when did you first realize your husband was stealing from you? Not until my brothers had him investigated, Imani said, her voice steady. I trusted him completely. When he said he needed money for his business, I gave it to him. When he said he was working late, I believed him. I never thought. Her voice caught. She took a breath. I never thought the man I married would destroy me like this. Can you tell the jury what happened the day he threw you out? Imani did. Every detail. Travis calling Simone to the house. Simone tearing her clothes while he watched. The scratches, the shoves, the terror that something would happen to her baby. I begged him, Imani said, tears streaming down her face now. I begged him to make her stop. And he just stood there. Then he told me to get out of my own house. Several jurors were crying. Travis's lawyer stood for cross-examination, but he was smart enough not to attack too hard. One wrong word to a pregnant woman testifying about abuse, and the jury would hate him. Mrs. Porter, he said carefully, isn't it true that you and my client were having marital problems? That the relationship was already falling apart? Because he was cheating on me, Imani said. And stealing from me. Yes, our marriage was falling apart. Because of what he was doing. But you can't prove he forged your signature, can you? You weren't there when the document was signed. I never signed that document, Imani said firmly. I never even saw it until the investigator showed me. If Travis claims I signed it, he's lying. That's for the jury to decide, the lawyer said. Yes, Imani agreed. It is. The defense's case was weak and everyone knew it. Travis's lawyer tried to paint him as a husband in a difficult marriage who made some poor financial decisions. Tried to suggest Imani had actually known about the expenses and was only claiming fraud now out of spite. But he couldn't explain the forged signature. Couldn't explain the fake business. Couldn't explain why Travis had hidden everything if it was all legitimate. Then he made a mistake. He called Travis to the stand. Travis took the oath and sat down, trying to look calm and confident. But Imani could see the sweat on his forehead. His lawyer lobbed him softball questions. Travis claimed Imani had given him permission for everything. Said the home equity loan signature was real. Imani had just forgotten signing it because of pregnancy brain. Several female jurors' faces hardened at that. Then Patricia stood for cross-examination. She didn't ease into it. Mr. Porter, you testified that your wife gave you permission to spend her inheritance. Do you have any documentation of that? Any text messages, emails, signed agreements? We were married, Travis said. We didn't need contracts between us. So no documentation. Got it. Patricia pulled up a text on the screen. Is this your phone number? Travis squinted at it. Yes. And is this a text message you sent to your wife on December 2nd, after she filed the lawsuit? The message appeared on screen. You fucking bitch. You think you can sue me? I'll bury you. Travis shifted in his seat. I was angry. She just. Yes or no, Mr. Porter? Did you send this message? Yes. Patricia pulled up another one. That baby probably isn't even mine. Did you send this message to your pregnant wife? I was. Yes or no? Yes, Travis said through clenched teeth. And this one? Patricia showed the message where he'd called their daughter a mistake. Travis didn't answer. Your Honor, Patricia said, please direct the witness to answer. Answer the question, Mr. Porter, Judge Morrison said. Yes, Travis finally said. I sent it. Patricia let that sit for a moment. Let the jury absorb it. Mr. Porter, you claim your wife gave you permission to spend her money. But you also claim the business you started with her $100,000 was legitimate. Can you provide any evidence that this consulting business existed? I had clients, Travis said defensively. Names. I can't give out client information. Any business license? Tax filings? LLC registration? Silence. Because there was no business, was there, Mr. Porter? You took $100,000 from your wife under false pretenses and spent it on your mistress. Objection. Travis's lawyer shouted. Sustained, the judge said. Rephrase, Ms. Chun. Where did the $100,000 go, Mr. Porter? Travis looked trapped. Various business expenses. Patricia pulled up the bank records. According to these statements, $43,000 went to pay off Simone Davis's student loans. $28,000 went to lease payments on her apartment. Is Simone Davis your business partner? No. Then why did your business funds pay her debts? No answer. Patricia kept going, methodical and ruthless. Every lie exposed. Every theft documented. By the time she was done, Travis looked like he'd been run over. No further questions, Patricia said, and sat down. Closing arguments took another 2 hours. Patricia reminded the jury that this wasn't about a marriage falling apart. It was about calculated theft. About a man who stole from the woman carrying his child and felt no remorse. Travis's lawyer tried to create reasonable doubt, but there was nothing reasonable about what Travis had done. The jury left to deliberate at 3:47 p.m. Imani sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, her brothers beside her, waiting. And waiting. At 5:23 p.m., Imani felt it. A sharp pain low in her belly, different from the baby's kicks. She gasped and grabbed Quincy's arm. You okay? He asked immediately. I think. Another pain. Stronger. I think it's time. Maya's eyes went wide. You're in labor? Right now. Apparently, our niece has perfect timing, Donovan said, already pulling out his phone to call for a car. But before they could move, the bailiff opened the courtroom door. Jury's back. Imani looked at her brothers. Another contraction hit, and she breathed through it. This baby can wait 10 more minutes, she said. I'm not missing this. They helped her back into the courtroom. She was breathing hard, her hand on her belly, but she was there. The jury filed back in. None of them looked at Travis. That was a good sign. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Morrison asked. We have, Your Honor. The foreperson stood and read from a paper. In the case of the People versus Travis Porter, on the charge of wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. Imani's hand tightened on Quincy's. On the charge of identity theft, we find the defendant guilty. Travis's head dropped. On the charge of forgery, we find the defendant guilty. 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 Every charge. Travis's lawyer was already standing, already asking for mercy. But Judge Morrison held up a hand. Sentencing will be in 2 weeks, she said. Mr. Porter, you're remanded into custody until that time. Bailiff. They put handcuffs on Travis right there in the courtroom. He looked back at Simone, who sat frozen in her seat, her face pale. Then he looked at Imani. She stared back at him, her hand on her belly where their daughter was about to enter the world. And she felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Nothing. He was already gone from her life. Another contraction hit, hard enough to make her gasp out loud. We need to go, Maya said urgently. Right now. They rushed out of the courtroom as Travis was led away in handcuffs. 12 hours later, at 6:15 a.m. on February 11th, Imani gave birth to a 7-pound, 6-ounce baby girl. She named her Grace. Because that's what this was. Grace. A second chance. A new beginning. Quincy and Donovan stood on either side of Imani's hospital bed, looking down at their niece with wonder in their eyes. "She's perfect," Quincy whispered. "She looks like you, sis," Donovan said, touching Grace's tiny hand. Imani held her daughter and felt something shift inside her. All the pain, all the betrayal, all the fear, it didn't disappear. But it got smaller. Because this right here, this was everything. 2 weeks later, Travis was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $850,000 in restitution. Imani wasn't there for the sentencing. She was home with Grace, building a life that had nothing to do with Travis Porter. And that was the sweetest victory of all. 18 months later, Imani stood in front of a building in downtown Riverside. Keys in one hand, Grace balanced on her hip with the other. The sign above the door read, "The Phoenix Foundation, support for survivors of domestic financial abuse." "What do you think, baby girl?" Imani asked her daughter, who was babbling happily and reaching for the keys. "You ready to see Mommy's new project?" Grace giggled and grabbed at Imani's hair instead. Behind them, Quincy and Donovan were unloading boxes from a truck. Maya was directing where everything should go, clipboard in hand like the organized force of nature she was. "You sure about this, sis?" Quincy called out, carrying a desk through the front door. "I've never been more sure of anything," Imani said. The restitution money had come through 6 months ago. $850,000, everything Travis had stolen, plus damages, plus interest. The courts had seized his accounts, put liens on everything he owned, garnished his prison wages. Imani could have kept it all, could have bought a bigger house, traveled, saved it for Grace's future. Instead, she'd used it to do something that mattered. The Phoenix Foundation was officially opening its doors today. The space was modest but welcoming. Bright paint on the walls, comfortable chairs in the waiting area, private offices where women could meet with lawyers, counselors, financial advisors. Imani had hired 3 staff members, all survivors themselves. Women who'd been where she'd been and came out the other side stronger. Her office was in the back, simple and functional. On the wall, she'd hung a photo of Grandma Rose. "This is for you," Imani whispered, touching the frame. "I'm using your money the way you'd want me to help people, to build something that lasts." A knock on the door frame made her turn. A young woman stood there, maybe 25, with a black eye she tried to cover with makeup. She was thin, nervous, clutching a small backpack like it held everything she owned. Because it probably did. "I'm sorry," the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. The door was unlocked. "I saw the sign outside. Are you open yet?" Imani's heart broke and swelled at the same time. "We are now," she said, setting Grace down in the playpen she'd set up in the corner. "Come in. What's your name?" "Carmen," the woman said, stepping inside hesitantly. "Carmen Rodriguez." "I'm Imani. Have a seat, Carmen." Carmen sat on the edge of the chair, still gripping her backpack. Her hands were shaking. "I don't have much money," she said quickly. "I saw on your website that you offer free services, but if that's not true, I can leave." "It's true," Imani said gently. "Everything we do here is free. Tell me what's going on." Carmen took a shaky breath. "My boyfriend, ex-boyfriend now, I guess. We were together for 4 years. He convinced me to put his name on my bank account 2 years ago. Said it would make things easier since we were living together." She looked down at her hands. 3 weeks ago, I came home from work and everything was gone. The apartment was empty. He'd cleaned out our account, $12,000 I'd saved, and disappeared. Imani knew that story. She'd lived a version of it. "Did you file a police report?" "They said it was a civil matter because his name was on the account. That I gave him access, so technically it's not theft." Carmen's voice cracked. "That's my rent money, my car payment, everything. And they said there's nothing they can do." "The police are wrong," Imani said firmly. "There are laws against financial abuse, and what he did qualifies. We're going to help you." Carmen looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. Really? We have lawyers on staff who specialize in this. We'll file a civil suit, freeze any accounts he might have opened with your money, and get you connected with emergency funds while we work on getting your savings back. I can't afford a lawyer." "You don't have to," Imani said. "That's why we're here. That's what we do." Carmen started crying then. Not sad tears. Relief. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." Imani came around the desk and pulled Carmen into a hug. "You're going to be okay," she said. "I promise. We've got you." Over the next 6 months, the Phoenix Foundation helped 83 women. Some were like Carmen, partners who'd stolen and run. Others were more complicated. Husbands who'd forged signatures on mortgages. Family members who'd drained elderly relatives' accounts. Employers who'd withheld wages and threatened deportation. Every case was different, but the pattern was the same. Someone with power had taken advantage of someone without it. And Imani made it her mission to balance those scales. She hired more staff, brought on a full-time therapist, because she'd learned that financial abuse left scars that went deeper than empty bank accounts. Partnered with shelters and job training programs to provide comprehensive support. The foundation grew, and so did Grace. At 18 months old, she was walking, babbling in full sentences that only Imani could understand, and had her uncles wrapped completely around her tiny finger. "She's going to be trouble," Donovan said one afternoon, watching Grace toddle around the foundation's playroom while Imani met with a client. "Just like her mama," Quincy agreed, grinning. Maya was filing paperwork nearby. "Her mama turned her pain into purpose," she said. "If Grace grows up to be half the woman Imani is, the world better watch out." 1 year after opening, the Phoenix Foundation held its first annual fundraiser. The event was at a hotel downtown, and Imani had been nervous about it for weeks. Public speaking wasn't her strength. But Patricia had convinced her that sharing her story would inspire donors. The ballroom was packed. Local business owners, lawyers, community leaders, even some reporters. Imani stood backstage, smoothing down her dress, trying to calm her racing heart. "You got this, sis," Quincy said, adjusting his tie. He and Donovan were sitting in the front row with Maya and Grace. "What if I mess up?" "Then you mess up," Donovan said with a shrug. "These people aren't here for a perfect speech. They're here because of what you built. Just tell them the truth." The truth. Imani could do that. The MC introduced her, and she walked onto the stage to polite applause. She stood at the podium and looked out at the crowd. All these people who'd shown up because they believed in what she was doing. 2 years ago, Imani began, her voice steady. "I was 6 months pregnant and homeless. My husband had stolen every dollar my grandmother left me, forged my signature to steal even more, and then threw me out of my own house." The room went silent. "I stood on that porch with torn clothes and nowhere to go, and I thought my life was over. I thought I'd failed. Failed my grandmother, failed my unborn daughter, failed myself." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "But I had something a lot of women in my situation don't have. I had brothers who refused to let me fall, who hired investigators, who found lawyers, who stood beside me every step of the way until justice was served." She saw Quincy and Donovan in the front row, both of them looking suspiciously misty-eyed. Not every woman has that. Not every survivor has family who can afford private investigators and high-powered attorneys. So when I got my restitution money back, I asked myself, what would Grandma Rose want me to do with this? And the answer was clear. Imani gestured to the screen behind her, where photos of the foundation's work appeared. "Help other women. Give them the resources I had. Make sure no one has to fight alone." She clicked to the next slide, success stories. Carmen, who'd gotten her $12,000 back and started her own business. Destiny, who'd escaped an abusive marriage and was now enrolled in nursing school. Lisa, whose father had stolen her inheritance, now reconciled with her family after legal intervention. In our first year, the Phoenix Foundation helped 127 women recover over $2 million in stolen funds. We provided free legal services, therapy, emergency housing assistance, and job training. The audience was leaning forward now, engaged. But the numbers don't tell the whole story. The real story is in the women who walk through our doors broken and leave standing tall. It's in the single mothers who thought they'd never afford rent getting their stolen wages back. It's in the elderly women who'd given up hope seeing their savings returned. Imani's voice grew stronger. Financial abuse is domestic violence. It's control disguised as love. It's theft disguised as partnership. And it destroys lives just as surely as a fist. She paused, her eyes sweeping the room. But here's what I learned from my own story. They can take your money, your home, your sense of security. But they can't take your strength. They can't take your voice. And they absolutely cannot take your future. The applause started then, building as she continued. I named this foundation Phoenix for a reason. Because we rise from the ashes. We rebuild. We refuse to stay broken. She looked down at Grace in Maya's arms, then back at the audience. 2 years ago, I thought my life was ending. Today, I'm standing here with my daughter, running a foundation that's changing lives, surrounded by people who refuse to let me give up. That's not just my victory. That's ours. Every woman we help, every dollar we recover, every life we rebuild. That's all of us saying no. No more. No more silence. No more shame. No more letting abusers win. The applause was thunderous now. If you're here tonight, you believe in that mission. You believe survivors deserve justice. So I'm asking you to invest in that belief. Help us expand. Help us hire more staff, open more locations, reach more women who need us. Imani smiled. Because the truth is, we're just getting started. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Later that night, after the fundraiser ended and they'd raised twice their goal, Imani sat in the foundation office with Grace asleep on her shoulder. The place was quiet. Everyone had gone home. But Imani wanted to sit here for a minute, in this space she'd built from her grandmother's legacy and her own pain. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Patricia, saw the news coverage of your speech. You were amazing. Also thought you should know. Travis's parole hearing was denied. He'll serve the full 12 years. Imani read the message twice. She waited to feel something. Satisfaction, maybe. Or vindication. But all she felt was peace. Travis was in prison. Simone had moved to another state, her reputation destroyed. The house had been sold to pay restitution, and both of them had nothing. But Imani? Imani had Grace. Had her brothers, had a foundation helping hundreds of women, had a future built on something stronger than revenge. She looked down at her sleeping daughter and pressed a kiss to her forehead. Your daddy made a lot of mistakes, she whispered. But his biggest one was thinking he could break me. Because look at us now, baby girl. Look at what we built. Grace stirred in her sleep and smiled. Outside, the city lights sparkled against the night sky. Inside, Imani Porter, survivor, mother, fighter, held her daughter close and felt nothing but gratitude. She'd lost everything and found herself. She'd been broken and rebuilt stronger. She'd turned her pain into purpose. And that was a victory no one could ever take away. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and your favorite moment in Imani's journey. And subscribe to Mr. William Chronicles so you don't miss stories like this. We tell stories about people who turned their pain into power. And trust me, there are more coming. See you in the next one.